The judge didn't hesitate. The courtroom was silent, except for the shuffle of papers and the creak of wooden benches, as everyone waited for the verdict. The man standing at the defense table barely moved. His hands were clasped so tightly in front of him that his knuckles had turned pale. When the words came guilty on all counts, they landed like a blow to the chest. He didn't shout. How could he? He didn't collapse. He just stared forward, because in that moment, he understood something terrifying. The truth no longer mattered. He was 28 years old, worked maintenance at an apartment complex. Quiet, reliable, no violent record. A faithful son, loving friend, a good neighbor. He had one most dedicated staff 3 times in a row for 3 years prior to this incident. In his spare time, he taught the kids in the neighborhood dance and piano lessons. Kelvin lived to put smiles in everyone's faces. On the night the crime happened, he had been repairing a broken boiler 2 buildings away. Time-stamped work orders showed it. A supervisor had signed off on the repair. A security guard remembered seeing him in the hallway shortly after. But the story police told the jury was simpler. A woman had been attacked in her apartment just after midnight. Because there were no signs of forced entry, investigators said the attacker had to be someone familiar, someone who lived nearby, someone with access. They said they found fibers on a victim's couch that matched his uniform, but the truth is that the day before the incident, Kelvin, on his way home from work, had helped the victim move heavy grocery bags from the victim's car to the victim's apartment on the 12th floor using the stairs, and in appreciation, Kelvin didn't take money. He only accepted the offer to sit for a cup of cold water, which didn't even take 3 minutes, and then he had to leave to meet up with the piano and dance lesson he had, arranged with the kids in the neighborhood. The investigators said they got a partial shoe print in the hallway, and a neighbor who thought they recognized a silhouette through a doorway. The prosecution called it overwhelming. The defense called it thin. The jury didn't take long to reach a decision. After all, he was black, and his frame fit the profile of a killer. All it took was 6 hours, and his life was over. From the start, the case moved fast, too fast. Detectives questioned him for 12 straight hours. No lawyer present, no food, no drink, and was denied access to go ease himself over and over again. There was no recording for most of interrogation. He finally signed a statement. He was bullied into signing a statement. Kelvin could barely remember what was written on the page. He thought cooperating would clear his name. It didn't. It sealed his fate. Police stopped searching for other suspects. Evidence that didn't fit the theory quietly disappeared from the conversation. One detail, small at the time, was barely mentioned at trial. Another fingerprint had been found on the inside of the apartment door. It didn't match him. It didn't match the victim. It was logged but never tested. Kelvin had to go down for this crime, guilty or not. The investigators were concerned about closing the case as quick as possible. It would be good for the press, they said. A known saint wasn't a saint after all. Good headlines, great publicity for the department. The department got what they wanted. Kelvin was sent to jail even though he was innocent. Prison erased him. Friends stopped answering letters. His mother visited every month until her health failed. Years passed in identical gray routines. Counts, meals, concrete yards, locked doors. Every appeal was denied. Judges wrote that the jury had already decided that the evidence was sufficient, that the system had worked. But he kept repeating the same sentence to anyone who would listen. You're looking at the wrong man. 7 years into his sentence, someone finally listened. A law student reviewing cold cases for a wrongful conviction project noticed something strange in the evidence index. There were 3 fingerprint cards logged. Only 2 had results. The third one had no lab report attached. When she asked about it, the file she received was incomplete, pages missing, lab numbers crossed out, dates that didn't line up. She escalated it to the nonprofit legal clinic supervising the project. They requested the print. The state delayed, said it couldn't be located. They said it had already been tested. When asked for proof, there was silence. Eventually, a judge ordered the evidence produced. It arrived in a sealed envelope marked with an old evidence barcode. Inside was a fingerprint card, untouched, never analyzed. When the lab finally ran it through modern databases, the match came back within hours. The print belonged to a man with prior assault charges. A man who had lived opposite the victim's apartment, in the same building at the time. A man police had interviewed once and never mentioned again. Phone records indicated he was inside the victim's apartment. Maintenance logs showed he had reported a broken lock weeks earlier. Neighbors had complained about shouting from his unit. None of this was disclosed to the defense. Not the fingerprint, not the complaints, not the proximity. Emails later uncovered between investigators raised even darker questions. One message read, "Fingerprint doesn't match our guy." Another replied, "Stick with what we have." A third, "Don't complicate this." The case went back to court quietly. No cameras, no headlines. The prosecution admitted the fingerprint existed. They argued it wouldn't have changed the jury's mind. The judge didn't agree. In a sharply worded ruling, the conviction was vacated. The withheld evidence, the incomplete disclosures, the abandoned suspect. It was too much. After serving 9 years in prison for a crime, he did not commit. Kelvin was released. No apology was given. No explanation. No charges filed against investigators who ended his life because they felt like. The second suspect was never tried. The state declined to reopen the case. He stepped outside the gates perplexed about life and his future, gray in his beard, holding a plastic bag that now contained all he now owns. The city had changed. So had everyone he knew. He had missed weddings, funerals, births, an entire life erased by paperwork and silence. When reporters finally found him weeks later, they asked the obvious question. Did he feel vindicated? He paused, then said something that stuck. They didn't prove I was innocent. They just proved they shouldn't have convicted me. And that's the part most people never think about. The system didn't collapse. No one resigned. No one was punished. Files were closed. Case numbers archived. Mistakes labeled procedural. Because the hardest truth in cases like this isn't that errors happen. It's that once a narrative is chosen, the system often stops looking. And the question isn't whether one innocent man went to prison. It's how many others are still sitting in cells right now because a piece of evidence was ignored, because a report was buried, because changing course was inconvenient. He was innocent, but the judge never listened. And by the time the truth arrived, almost a decade had already gone by. Life is unscripted.
Stories like this deserve to be heard. Join Life is Unscripted for more real-life experiences from around the world. Subscribe, like, and share. More stories are coming.